Author Margaret Atwood is known for her insights into the female psyche. She has written over 20 books with a unique, if not always politically correct, feminist perspective. She's the author of Cat's Eye and The Handmaid's Tale. Her latest novel is called The Robber Bride, and we're very pleased to have her here. Welcome.
Thank you.
What's interesting, this book is on the bestseller list and has gotten lots of attention. Tell me about, the idea, the source for the book. We all know where you got the title, and how you changed the title of The Robber Bride. But what's the inspiration? What brought you to write this story and create a character like Xenia?
Well, a long, long time ago, there used to be villainesses in literature.
Yeah.
And
Lady
there were
Macbeth.
also Lady Macbeth and even adventuresses like Becky Sharp of Vanity Fair, and then they got into the movies, and you had femme fatales such as Theda Bara, and you had Marlene Dietrich in The Blue Angel, and then they all disappeared.
In the 50s or when?
I think it was before that. My theory is, and I was reading some old Life magazines and looking at the ads and looking at the stories, I think it was during the Second World War, when women were supposed to be staunch supporters of their men, and they were supposed to be the nice small-town girl who was waiting, and then the man would come back, and then they would start a family, which is what they did in the late 40s and 50s. And you can't do that with Marlene Dietrich out of The Blue Angel.
Yes.
So all those Joan Crawford parts that you had in the 30s just went away. And instead we had, I guess about the most we had was Jane Russell, maybe a kind of bombshell, or we had Marilyn Monroe, who was a sex object but innocent and naive. You didn't have a designing, clever, manipulative woman.
The only one I can think of in a particular role may have been Faye Dunaway in Network.
Well, Faye Dunaway was maybe the coming back of that kind of person a little bit, but they weren't around a lot, certainly not in the 50s. And I can't remember, we had a lot of Debbie Reynolds kinds
that's right,
of people.
Doris Day, people like that.
Doris Day, Kim Novak, those kinds of people. June Allison, remember June Allison?
Yes.
She always played the good wife of jazz.
So here you come and you say, I'm going to create somebody in the long line of Lady Macbeth.
I say, why haven't these people been around? And doesn't that really limit the range available to, if it were theater, you would say it limits the range available to female performers.
Yes.
And it also limits the way we're looking at human nature.
Because when I read this, I was thinking this is a fascinating role for it. I'm thinking, what actress could play this? But because it clearly is, women are constantly very good actresses. When's the last time you saw Meryl Streep, for example? They're always frequently talking about how many great roles are there for women,
Well, juicy.
So, juicy roles is the word, juicy. Yeah, and so tell me about Xenia. What kind of character did you want to create?
We have had some evil women coming back lately in things like Fatal Attraction.
I was going to say, yes.
But those people are nut bars.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Where is the kind of sane, clever,
Machiavellian, smart
operator? Where is the female Iago? Where is the Becky Sharp? Where is the person making her way via her wits?
Yeah, but here her victims are women, though.
Oh, both. Oh, both. She's got some of each.
Yeah, but primarily women.
Well, we see the story through the other three women in the book. We don't see the story through her eyes, and we don't see the story through the eyes of the men in this book, because the men are the loot.
Yeah.
They are what she tucks into her suitcase and makes off with, although I have to say they don't kick and scream a lot.
Yes, no, that's right, but they're the prize.
Yes,
the loot or the prize.
Yes.
So the book opens at a restaurant, there are three women, and I don't want to get into structure, but tell me a little bit in a sense, you want to set up, you obviously want to tell a story in a way of a character who is all the things we've talked about. You want to tell that kind of story, because you wanted to make the point that women, anybody who steps along and say that women have all the moral virtues of the world and men have none, just don't know what they're talking about.
Well, this was a 19th century view, and it's the angel on the pedestal, and that women are somehow by nature good, which just means that men are by nature naughty, and that they can go off and be naughty, and they're just realizing their nature, whereas women are somehow, it's like foot binding. They're made smaller than life because they're deprived of bad parts. And when you think about power, Power is always the power to do bad things as well as the power to do good things. Look at electricity.
Yes.
You can use it to work your toaster, or you
Right.
can use it to fry somebody.
Yes.
But if it didn't have the capability of frying somebody, it wouldn't be power.
Well, Michael Crichton was here on Friday,
Yeah.
and his point in his book about disclosure, not to make comparison between you and Michael Crichton, but it is the same idea, is that when he flips over the characters in Disclosure, basically, and this is a book that's got 950,000 copies out in print now, it is the notion that sexual harassment is not about gender, it's about power.
It always was.
Which you would agree to.
It always
Yeah.
was. It always was. I mean, this is not news to the women's movement. They've been saying
Well,
that
it's not
for
news
years.
to the women's movement, right?
Yeah. No, not news to the women's movement. They've been saying it for years, and everybody said, "Oh, stop being shrill."
Yes.
So
Now,
let's,
but
let's
are
see
you,
who tells him to stop being shrill.
are you going to run into any flack on the creation of a character like this?
I haven't run into a lot of it so far.
Yeah.
In fact, I was in England doing this book, and quite a well-behaved, well-brought-up English woman stood up at the back of the room and said, "We're tired of being good all the time."
Is it much more interesting to create an evil character?
John,
Not evil,
John
but
Keats said so.
yeah, he
That's
did. What
my
did he
authority.
say?
He said that Shakespeare got as much joy out of creating Iago
right.
as he did out of creating Imogen, and I would say more, because we all know what play Iago is from,
Yes.
and what play is Imogen
That's
from.
exactly right. So the evil characters bring you more attention and give you more better lines to write and everything else.
Well, I wouldn't put it exactly
How would you put
that
it?
way. I would say that they explore, they allow you to
range.
explore the full range. I mean, if you took all the mezzos out of an opera
Yeah.
and left only the sort of good sopranos,
Yeah.
there's nobody for the good soprano to play off.
Yeah. So this is a mezzo-soprano, she is.
She is definitely a mezzo, yes.
Yeah. Why?
She just has that mezzo richness and flavor.
Yeah. Now, do you see things in terms of musical?
Partly, yes.
Connotation. You do, don't you?
Absolutely, I do. This is a quartet in a way, because
Yes.
Xenia does bad things to the first character in the 60s,
Right.
worse things to the second character in the 70s,
Then-
and the very worst things of all to the third character in the 80s. And if you're thinking structure, well, why not talk about that? Remember Tales of Hoffmann?
Yes.
It opens with the prelude.
Right.
Then it has 3 stories. And then it closes with an epilogue, a very curious one. And my epilogue isn't like that, but structurally, and I wasn't thinking of this when I was writing the book, but then I happened to look at Tales of Hoffmann just after that, and I thought, there it is. And it does happen to be one of my favorite operas, but I wasn't thinking of it consciously when I was writing the book.
There's another character here, which is the city of Toronto, where you live. You
Yes.
have this even more than Catskill. This is Toronto, or less so. What do you think? I mean, of the books that you've written, is Toronto more prominent here than?
It's definitely a player,
Yeah.
but,
How is it a player?
well,
Because scenes happen in Toronto,
Scenes
and that gives
happen in it,
definition to them.
yes.
And she runs a business in Toronto. Roz runs a business in Toronto.
Roz runs a business.
Right,
Karis
Roz.
lives on Toronto
Right.
Island. Tony teaches at the university.
Right.
So when you say Toronto, yes, but it's downtown Toronto. It's not the suburbs.
Yeah.
I leave that territory for somebody else to explore.
Are you at all interested in the Bobbitt trial?
What can I say? I didn't. There's nothing like that in my book.
I know, but
no body parts are
that's
removed.
right. No, that's right.
No.
But are you interested? I mean, America seems to be. It's on the front page of papers and the evening news,
Well,
and court TV
okay,
is.
a long, long time ago, when we were talking about jokes and what sorts of things were funny and what sorts of things were not funny, Northrop Frye said,
Yes.
there's all these English postcards that are supposed to be funny about large wives hitting their little weenie husbands over the head with rolling pins. And he said, now why is that funny? Because if it was a cartoon about a large husband hitting his little weenie wife over the head, that wouldn't be funny at all. Well, what is funny is the reversal of expected roles. And it wouldn't be funny at all if it were some man cutting a body part off a woman.
Right.
Nobody would make jokes about that. I don't think it's really very nice for anybody to cut body parts off anybody, but what has interested me is the way in which all of this is played. You know, how it has been played in the media, and the amazing number of Bobbitt jokes that are
Yes,
now
right.
out there.
Oh, playing off the word
And
cut,
you have to-
sever, all this.
Oh, you have to wonder, why has this been made into a sort of humorous event? Is it just the shock horror value, or is it that it's funnier for a well-dressed, rich-looking person to slip on a banana peel than it is for a homeless person to slip on a banana peel? So I think it's the idea of something happening to a figure that you would assume had the power ascendancy. This is back to the Michael Crichton point. It's not about body parts, it's about power. And power reversal.
But the subject, I mean, I mentioned the LA Times said that, you know, you have spent a part of your time mapping female psychic territory in commenting on you.
Well, male, I would hope, too.
Yeah, but do you think much male is female?
I have some characters that are men in other books. They don't happen to be center stage in this book because they are the loot.
Yeah.
And, you know, the silverware doesn't talk a lot. But on the other hand, just to console you, people don't break into your house and steal the plastic spoons.
No.
They go for the valuable stuff. Yeah. So at least somebody thinks these men are valuable, and the women certainly want them back.
But interesting characters here are gay.
Oh, you mean the ones that talk the most?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the other men talk from time to time.
But the relationships that work and...
There's only, one of those, I think. There's actually two relationships that are still intact at the end of the book, and one of them is male-female, and the other is gay, unless you count people's relationships with their children, which are very important. You know, relationships with persons of sexual nature are not the only relationships in the world.
But what is it that is your central fascination as a novelist, as a social observer, the relationship between the sexes?
I think I'm a 19th century sort of a person as a novelist, and I think my interest is in the panoramic view.
Yeah.
And here I'm thinking not even Dostoevsky, I'm thinking Tolstoy, who we're all supposed to be a bit mad at these days because he wasn't nice to his wife.
Right.
But in a novel like War and Peace, or in a novel like Anna Karenina, you think Anna Karenina is just about somebody jumping in front of a train. If you go back and look at the novel, you will see that he tried to get everything in. He tried to get birth and death and politics and class relationships and men and women and men and husbands and wives and mistresses and lovers and just the whole
and great military campaigns.
Huge. That's not so much in Anna
Karenina.
I know.
I was thinking
War and
of War and Peace. Yeah, I was thinking War and Peace. But because you were just talking about all the themes that he dealt with. But
and that's partly a war novel.
Yeah. This.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tony is a military
That's right, the military historian.
She gives you 3,000 years of mayhem, slaughter, murder, carnage, invasion, war, death, genocide, all of those things, because that's what she studies.
But you're also fascinated by war, I assume.
We all have lived through a century of in which war has been very important.
But, and you think...
And all of the women in the book are war babies, which means, of course, that they have damaged or missing fathers. That's what happens.
Okay, but also all the women here have abandoned, their mothers abandoned them.
Oh, no, Rose's mother didn't abandon her.
No, Rose's mother...
Karis's mother went crazy.
Yeah, right.
Tony's mother ran off.
Right,
she ran off.
But they lost their mother. They were...
Yes, something happened to their
Something
mothers.
happened to the mother, that's right. Something happens when I mean, right. Now, what are you trying to say there?
If they had been flawless characters, Xenia the con artist would never have been able to get through their door. A con artist like Xenia can only work her magic on you if there's something you want, if she purports to be able to give it to you, and if she's lying. So that is the substance of an active con artist.
But what she does in every case.
Yeah.
And but your point is that she invites you in. That you invite her in. Xenia could not get in unless you allowed her in.
You allow her in. It's true.
But back to war, you in fact, I'm thinking about the controversy we had here also about gays in the military and women in the military. I assume that you would be strongly in favor, as a citizen of Canada, would be strongly in favor of both gays in the military and combat roles for women, right?
I don't know about that. First of all, we've had gays in the military forever, and it doesn't seem to have damaged the Canadian Army.
Right.
Now, I don't know what the rules and regulations are governing that, but I spoke recently to the Royal Military College, where the students go to become war persons. And I think they thought what I was going to do.
Warriorettes, or what?
I think they thought I was going to say, you're all very bad and why aren't you pacifists? And instead I read some of Tony's material about
Tony, your character.
Military clothing and how bad military design has cost lots of lives.
But look what happened to Kim Campbell in your country. My goodness. You know,
Now, what has this got to do with
nothing.
war?
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the war. But I tell you, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, Margaret
You know,
Thatcher.
and Margaret
yeah,
Thatcher
she was
as a
hawk.
woman who was a political leader, who was a hawk, who
yes,
was...
Yes. All of that is true. So
Yeah.
what are you saying, that Kim Campbell didn't turn into Margaret Thatcher?
No, I was thinking
Yeah,
of
you're
Kim
right.
Campbell had terrible success at the polls, is what I was saying.
Well,
the lack of success at the
Kim
polls.
Campbell,
But she was a former defense minister of your country.
She was, but she didn't run a very good political
That's
campaign.
true. And so there's no lesson to be read out of that.
No, I'm sorry.
Except the change of
No,
political
but
time.
we could talk about Elizabeth I.
In which there's a great correlation between Elizabeth I and Margaret Thatcher.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's several ways of being a female military commander, and Elizabeth I and Margaret Thatcher both use the same ploy, which you have to think of something to do if you're a woman, and both of them did the following. If I were a man, I'd certainly be a lot stiffer in the spine than you lot. If I were a man, I'd go out and defeat those Spaniards, and Margaret Thatcher...
And didn't Margaret Thatcher used to also say to some of the people, I mean, she would make fun of them, and whatever the American term is. Wet, which is the equivalent to wimp in America.
Absolutely, yeah. She used to put down the men in her cabinet that she wanted to get rid of by implying that they were less manly than they should be.
And certainly less
manly than she was.
Yeah, right. I was going to let you say it. The book is called The Robber's Bride. It is a novel. Margaret Atwood, who has many fans and many admirers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. We'll be right back. Stay with us.